So I wanted to recognize our board members and I wanted to recognize our council members. Thank you so much for being here. I wanted to take a minute, and this is something kind of fun, and I think we still have a minute for something fun. So if you, in honor of Women's History Month, if you are a woman, stand up. If you love a woman, stand up. If you respect a woman, stand up. If you mentor a woman, stand up. If you elevate a woman, stand up. Is there anybody not standing? I can go on. So thank you all, because Women's History Month is critical, not just for women, but for all of us that are fortunate enough to be women and all of us that are fortunate enough to have women in our lives. And we all believe we make a big difference. So thank you for that. Thank you also for everyone who came to the Lisa House event. Very exciting capstone event we did for Black History Month. Would hope to have Lisa back in the future, so we'll look for an opportunity for that. Coming up in the future, sometime the next 3 months or so, we're going to partner with a couple of groups in town and work on studying a book called Coming Apart. So if you're interested in getting ahead of a book read, Coming Apart is a book by Charles Murray. And it might be controversial, but I think it also will get us thinking. And I think that's what's going to make a difference, because in Albion, we're trying to lead the change and be the change that we believe the whole state and the whole nation might benefit from. So try to look for that book, Coming Apart, and we will get started on a book read. A couple of other quick announcements from the EDC's perspective. The Match on Main is back on. So it was deferred while the MEDC was regrouping, but we're very excited that they are bringing it back. I have a couple of other updates from the MEDC. Some of you know that the SOAR project, the SOAR funding mechanism, has now been called Make It in Michigan. So as you see the ads for Make It in Michigan, it's the same as the old SOAR project, and that's the strategic money that we are hoping we will be able to attract here in the city to be able to expand into our new industrial park. So you'll be seeing a lot about Make It in Michigan, and we're very excited about that. We also are very excited about the current program for MEDC focuses on people, places, and projects. And people need to be trained. They need to have a place to live, i.e. places, and things to do, i.e. places, and projects are what get those things to happen. So that's our focus this year, as is the focus of the MEDC. So we're very excited that we seem to be in alignment. So I'm super excited. You have a packet in front of you, which is not anything I'm going to talk about tonight, but I wanted you to have some takeaway information. And the next thing I would like to do is introduce the city manager so she can give her presentation. So no stranger to all of you, Haley Snyder. And I didn't really have a bio for you, but your bio speaks for itself right now. So, so I'm very excited to have you here, and thank you so much for coming. And I'm just going to step aside and I will give you this mic.
Thank you. Good evening all, Haley Snyder, Albion City Manager. I am getting ready to complete my 3rd year in my role. I'd like to say I get the pleasure of coming and sharing all of the great things going on at the city, but a lot of this would not be possible without our wonderful staff. So I just want to acknowledge all of the hard work that they do each and every day. So next slide, please. So this is an overview of our Albion City Council. We have Mayor Victoria Garcia Snyder, Donovan Williams, Lynn Reed, Mayor Pro Tem Nora Jackson, Marcola Lawler, Vivian Davis, and Andy French. Our meetings are held on the 1st and 3rd Mondays of the month, 7 p.m. at the City Hall. Next slide, please. So look at a few things that happened, accomplishments in 2023. Here at City Hall, we really focused on improving our communications with our residents and surrounding communities. So we recently did a website upgrade to make our website more user-friendly, help people navigate it more easily, and just provide more information on our website. Also, the Naturally Connected Citywide newsletter, in partnership with several organizations here in our community, we now have a community ambassador that helps get the positive word out on all of the great things that are happening here in our community. We issued a new employee policy handbook. Our employee handbook had not been updated in quite some time, so that was, it took a lot of work, but we are happy to have a new updated handbook in place. We successfully negotiated 4 collective bargaining agreements with our 4 union groups. That's always fun to come to the table and talk about ways to improve working conditions and benefits for our union groups. So that was, took a lot of effort, but we were successful in getting new 3-year contracts implemented. And we recently initiated an Employee of the Quarter program. As I said, all of the things that we're able to accomplish, it really cannot be done without the hard work of our employees. So really lifting them up and praising them and showing them off to our community. So we now have an Employee of the Quarter program. Next slide, please. We had a few different infrastructure projects go on last year. The one main road project was our Haven Road and River Street Improvements project. The city was able to secure $790,000 in grant funding to help accomplish that project. There was a local match, but the grant funding really covered the majority of the costs for that project. The North Albion Street Bridge, we also were able to secure a $1.7 million grant to completely replace the North Albion Street Bridge. If you all have seen it before then, it was a little scary to drive over. So last year, they started the project, but giving the lead times for some of the water main materials, the rest of that project will be completed this year, and we will have a brand new bridge structure along North Albion Street. And then we also have our water service material inspection project. So we also were able to secure a grant through Eagle for $400,000 to identify water service line materials. So in accordance with our lead and copper rules and regulations that the state have put in place, this is helping us to do that. So that project is still underway and is set to be completed this August. And then we are also able to secure funding for $18 million in funding through the USDA RD for a wastewater treatment plant upgrade. So our wastewater treatment facility will have a lot of upgrades to help enhance the services that we provide to our community. And that project will begin this June. Next slide, please. And I just want to highlight a few other grants that we were able to secure. We received a $1 million grant through the Eagle Dam Risk Reduction Grant Program. So we are trying to figure out what to do. We have 5 dams here in our community. And we're at a point where we either need to do a lot of maintenance and improvements, or the state is really pushing to remove the dams to let the waterways return back to their natural flow. So this is helping us in that next phase of the project. We have been doing a feasibility study to see what's our best option and solution to address our, the dams here in town. We also, in conjunction with that, we have the Great Lakes Fishery Trust. We were also able to secure $150,000 to go towards that same project. So this will all go towards the design phase. City Council will actually make that decision or determination on what we do with the dams here in our community. Public safety, they were able to secure $599,000 from the FEMA Assistance to Firefighters Grant to purchase a new fire truck. So I know our Chief of Public Safety is very excited to have that new truck coming. They're actually in the build stage, so we should have that new equipment here in the next few months. And then we also have the MDNR Spark Grant to go towards the second phase of the McIntosh Park project. If you've been out to McIntosh Park, I would say 2 years ago now, we put, thankful to the Tony DeNicola gift, there is a new splash pad, playground, and pavilion in McIntosh Park. So this grant will go towards the second phase, which will include a second parking lot, a walking path around the perimeter of the park, landscaping, and other amenities. So we are very happy to secure that funding. And we also received word that we received $4 million in federal appropriation dollars to redo the roadways in that same area. So here I would say within the next 2 years, that park space will be completely revitalized. And then we're also able to secure, this amount actually has changed. It now is over $12 million through the Drinking Water State Revolving Loan Fund for a water system improvement project. So this will include a new water tower, improvements to our water treatment facility, and then water main repair all throughout the community. So coming in 2024, we are still focused on infrastructure projects. Our infrastructure is the foundation of our community. Without solid infrastructure in place, we can't attract new residents, new businesses, and that's really what keeps our community going. So as I mentioned before, we have the McIntosh Park Phase 2 project that will be completed this summer. We will be finishing up the North Albion Street Bridge Replacement Project. The Water System Improvements Project will begin this fall. The Wastewater Treatment Plant Upgrades Project will begin this summer. We're working to update our capital improvement plan. That is a 5-year plan that just helps us budget for necessary equipment and infrastructure projects to help keep providing the services to our community. And then we are also in the process of our redevelopment ready community certification renewal. This is a certification that we received through the MEDC that tells businesses that we are here to support you. We welcome new businesses. So we are in the process of doing that renewal. And with that, I will happy to answer any questions. I will pass it back over to Virgie.
Well, before you go, I wanted to say congratulations on increasing that amount of that grant, because it was 9.6 million and now it's over 12, but she's not really giving all the information about this project. It's like a $25 million project that's been underway for several years, as these big projects are. So huge that to be able to attract businesses, to be able to repair the roads, to be able to do the water work that needs to be done. Like, this infrastructure work is no joke, you know, and she's been just working hard on that. So just a huge round of applause for that amount of work. So next we have our DDA. So Emily has been gracious enough to put a PowerPoint together tonight and is here to explain all things downtown. And I'm so excited because I forgot to invite Emily last year, so I screwed this all up last year. So I'm grateful to have a second year to try better. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Good evening, everyone. My name is Emily Verbeke. I am a downtown business owner here in right here on Superior Street at the bakery. And so I've been a member of the DDA board since right around 2019. So I got just barely a year in before the pandemic rolled in to the DDA. And so it's, as I was reflecting back just recently on just the recent year activity, there's been a lot of growth and change within the DDA board as a whole. And part of it, I think we recognize how resilient and driven downtown businesses, residents of Albion are to open businesses, to run businesses. We had 7 businesses open during the pandemic, which was, you know, seemingly unheard of. And a lot of those plans were put in place, but it was really amazing to see how many businesses committed to being downtown in some of the most challenging times, and they continue to exist there. So I think that that's really a testament to our community and those who want to serve the community here in Albion. So the Downtown Development Authority update is a part of one of our required additional information sessions for the public outside of our regular scheduled meetings. And so it's really great that we can do this when we already are collecting as a community and have this opportunity. And so if you aren't familiar, the Downtown Development Authority meets monthly on the second Wednesday of the month. We're early risers at 7:30. So if anybody wants to join us over at City Hall on Wednesday mornings, our next meeting will be a week from today. to yesterday. I'm like, what day is it? I get my days all mixed up. So go ahead and go to the next slide. Our current members include Dave Atchison, who is a resident and owner in the Downtown District, Councilmember Nora Jackson, Victoria Snyder as a mayor, Jim Stewart, who is also a business owner in downtown, Andrew Tesdale is a resident of downtown, myself, and then James Whitehouse, who is a community at large member as a part of the organization. So the DDA is made up of both business owners or individuals who have a vested interest in the downtown, residents of the downtown, and then community members at large. So you can go ahead and go to the next one. So the DDA continues to really ensure that we are continuing our discussions and our alignment to be within our downtown development plan. It can be really easy for boards to move beyond into some new ideas that are outside of the scope of development plans that they might have worked very hard to sort of establish and are meant to look at 5 or 10 years out. And so I think the board has done a really good job of continuing to revisit that document, not have it be something that just sort of sits on the shelf. A lot of effort was put into that as a part of Albion's Project Rising Tide, which was, again, a pre-pandemic opportunity provided by the state of Michigan under our former governor. And so that plan is very rich with information from residents and visitors to the downtown and business owners. And so I think the board has really continued to utilize that document as a guiding document and make sure that our discussions and their activities and the things that we're working on that are really in alignment. So I believe that if you were to go and look at the city's webpage in the downtown district and look at that development plan, that what I share here today on what we've been working on and what we're looking forward to the future, that you would see those parts and pieces within that plan and feel like, yes, I do think that the DDA is really working on these things. And it will be soon time for us to really look at that again and reflect on what we've done over the past 5 years or so and what we do into the future. So you can move on to the next one. So some recent successes. We brought back the facade grants for the downtown district that had been put on pause and a hold while the DDA really struggled with revenue and what was coming in from the tax base at the time. I don't know the exact date or year that it was put on pause, but had been a number of years since the DDA had awarded facade grants. So in 2023, we granted just shy of $15,000 to 3 projects in the downtown district. The cap was a $5,000 total for each project with a 50% match from those businesses. So really almost $30,000 went back into downtown businesses or downtown organizations, both by the business owner of the organization and then as a match from the DDA. So those included things like improved entry doors that were handicap accessible and things like windows and storefront windows that help to reduce costs for heating and cooling, improved facades like tuck pointing of brick structure portions, and then the Secretary of State building actually was, those were new windows that were put in the Secretary of State building, and the exposure of that very, very cool historic column that is there. So those were projects that came about through the DDA's facade grants. So in 2024, or I should say, our application window closed late 2023, and then these are funds for 2024. We did see an increase in the number of submitted applications. There's a slightly fewer total dollars, but still 3 projects, and the DDA has for their next meeting a potential sort of a smaller round of a mid-year grant round, and really working to support some of the smaller projects that didn't quite have some of the parts and the pieces that were required for the grant approval. And so we have board members who are really working to support downtown business owners and downtown organizations to make sure that they bring really strong grants so that we can make sure that we fund those projects. And we have really been then utilizing those facade grants as storytelling opportunities to market the downtown district, to market what's going on here in Albion, and tell the organizations that are really committed to the downtown district and being here, want to reinvest in their properties and spaces. So facade grants is one of the parts that we really feel like we made growth on in the last year. Marketing is another big piece of the plan. So like Haley mentioned, we have also contributed into Albion's first ambassador position. And so this is a full-time position. This person wakes up every day working to tell the best of Albion and to reach as far as possible in as many ways as possible to tell all the great things that are happening in Albion. So there are stories about businesses, but they're about individuals, they're about organizations, they're about all the different parts and pieces that make up Albion. And so with that, there's been a relaunch of downtownalbion.com, enhancements to the downtown district with both print material boxes, if you've noticed those out and along Superior Street, as well as some of the QR code signage. So those direct visitors to the Downtown Albion website that's being regularly updated with new businesses. It's got a calendar of information and all those things. So that's a piece that is really we feel like helping to do a part of the DDA's work of marketing and really promoting, the downtown district. And then also last year, the DDA approved a formal process to support other creators of events in the downtown district. So we have an application for organizations that are putting on events that are here in the downtown district to request financial support from the DDA to support those events. So third, we've been caretakers officially of the farmers market for I think almost 4 years now. Continue to work on improving number of visitors there, and as well as our vendor base. Those are true chicken and the egg scenarios. What brings visitors to the farmers market? It's vendors, but what really matters to vendors is how many visitors are there. So we continue to work on what are the levers that we can impact and influence to support both of those organizations and or entities as a part of that. So that is an area that I wish I had even bigger celebration towards. We're going to celebrate the small wins on that one. But we need to continue to work on increasing those visitors and the number of vendors, because I think the Albion community, our agricultural and our artisan community, is so rich and strong, and it has a huge history, and the farmers market is a great way for us to feature those here in the community in a central spot. And like I said, we're very happy to be able to have partnered with Community Foundation, Greater Albion Chamber of Commerce, and the City of Albion to support the Albion Brand Ambassador position, because we really feel like it has helped us to move forward with some of the items that are in our development plan. You can go on to the next one. And I also realized, as I was reviewing a few things, we did a parking study in 2023, and I kind of forgot. And part of the reason I sort of forgot about that was that overarching was we have plenty of parking. We could do a lot more to maintain. So part of the DDA's discussions have been, how do we set some funding aside to make sure that we can maintain and improve the parking that we currently have? It's not that we need additional parking or access to parking. We actually have plenty of spots, but they're not well mapped out and labeled and all those things. So those are part of the things that we're really working on in the coming years. So we continue to work on long-term improvement plans for Stauffer Plaza. We were certainly disappointed when we were not awarded some of the placemaking grant funding in the latter part of the year, and so we're hopeful to continue to work on identifying grant funding opportunities and other ways that we can take and work on some smaller parts of a larger overhaul of Stauffer Plaza and improvement and placemaking for that. And then signage is a big piece both for our trailways, parking. There's a lot of signage and wayfinding improvements that we can make within the downtown district. So that's a piece of the work that the DDA is undertaking this year and into next year. And that also sort of has gone along with a bit of a conversation and work about understanding the city's sound system that is in downtown, making sure that it is accessible and available for big events such as Festival of Forks, but that when we want music and different kinds of things, that's really ready and it doesn't have to be a 5 or multiple week troubleshooting process to even get that going. So that's a conversation about wired versus wireless and wonderful things like that. The board also, as a part of our funding, or I should say our budget discussion in the latter part of the year, really committed to bringing in some grant funding to the DDA specifically, potentially for projects such as signage or the sound system or Stauffer Plaza. So those are, we feel like we have opportunities to apply for some smaller grants that make sense for the DDA. And so the DDA, all the board members really made a commitment to work on that in this coming year and to really identify some great opportunities for us. And then maintenance is another piece that the board has really been working on to understand how do we continue to maintain everything from the light poles to the Christmas lights to make sure that those things that we have don't need to be replaced fully in 5 or 10 years, that we could keep up on the maintenance. So we've been working with the city manager and the maintenance department to understand the needs within the downtown district of those items and understand what's within the scope and the capacity of city staff to be able to take on projects, or do we work in partnership to identify independent contractors in some of those situations. So those are parts that we're kind of working to understand as well. And like City Manager Snyder mentioned, communication has been a piece that we've really been working to make sure. So the newsletters, the online information, but also writing some updates with going into our newspapers just about what the DDA is working on is a part of the DDA's commitment to improving our communication with the downtown residents and business owners, but also the community as a whole about what is going on in the downtown district. And so it doesn't go without certainly challenges. We continue to have unfilled seats on the board. So if anybody here isn't a downtown resident or has a vested interest in downtown, please apply. But also I think building consensus around projects and making sure that all stakeholders are included in conversations and that they are really help move the community and make sure that this is a space and an area that is attractive to visitors and that we continue to bring more and more people into the downtown district and it's a positive experience for them. And really continuing to understand the impacts and the needs of downtown businesses in the district. You know, they certainly are a huge piece of where the downtown gets their revenue. So it's there's a lot of parts like, the hotel sort of taxes goes to Visitors Bureau, but ours is primarily from property taxes and then personal property of business owners within the district. So it's important for us to really stay connected to those stakeholders in the area, and so that's just as challenging. And then I think the opportunities that we have we are really starting to progress through some plans that were put in place 5, 7, 10 years ago, which were absolutely needed projects and plans for us to defer property tax, either increments or to reimburse brownfield. That was the way for the DDA and the city to support projects like the hotel and some of the other buildings that have been restored and impacted within the downtown district that have new businesses in those buildings. So we're starting to move through and see some of the new revenue or increases in property taxes from those come into both the DDA and the brownfield and the revolving loan fund. And so the board has really been talking a lot and understanding and building our own background knowledge on brownfield plans and how some of those dollars that are now coming in, how we really ensure that they are spent well in Albion and potentially in the downtown district, because it's kind of new for us to have some of this funding in these ways available to the DDA, to the EDC, to the Brownfield Board. This is kind of new. So those are opportunities that we have that we're really working on. I think the small projects are really good opportunities and good potential wins for us. Those are those opportunities. I think we're getting close to maybe where the DDA could have a part-time director in the coming years, just based on revenue and revenue projections that we have over the next few years, which would really help us to meet some of the needs on connecting with downtown businesses and, again, community, improving our communication. And those public and private partnerships continue to be strong, and they continue to sort of come to us and make themselves known, such as the Battle Creek Real Estate Agents Group has an interest in supporting some placemaking projects here in this area because they support the Calhoun County area. So those are opportunities, those are some private and public partnerships that I think if we continue to work to put ourselves in a really good place of thinking about the future and what could be some projects, then we're better able to capitalize on those opportunities when they come to us. I think that might be the last of my slides.
So our next speaker is someone else I forgot to invite last year. So thank you for forgiving me for not knowing that that's typically what happens here in Albion, and some of you came to hear Michael speak, and he wasn't here, and so some of you were disappointed, so I apologize. But a year later, I've got it right. So Michael Horrigan from W. Upjohn Institute is here to give an official economic forecast. So, and I don't know if you want to use this mic or, because
sure.
we have, yeah, I'll let you have this one.
I can scream, but I think the mic is a little bit better, right? Okay, all right. I'm going to see if this works, and it doesn't. All right, never mind. So I will ask you to just slide forward, do slides forward. Okay, cool. Thank you, Virgie. And no problems with the invite. I'm new too. This is my 5th anniversary, but I finally start feeling like I'm part of the community, so totally understand. But thank you for inviting me. Representative Hosmuth, welcome. The Mayor Snyder. Sean is from our Michigan Works, which is part of the Upjohn Institute, and Sean was actually telling me that I think you're having a job fair relatively soon.
KCC,
right.
Community College.
So next slide. So I'm supposed to speak for about 30 minutes, so I just want you to be prepared for that. When you, after 15 minutes, you say, when is this guy going to stop talking? It'll be 15 minutes more. Okay. So I want to tell you about the U.S. economy and the local economy. That's kind of part of my objective. And I want to tell some stories. I want to talk to you about what I think is going on. It's my interpretation. It's not official. It's just, I look at the data all the time. And in particular, some good news on GDP and inflation. And believe it or not, it's some good news on inflation. But I want to tell a story about if the inflation news is so good, then why are people so mad? So I want to talk about that. The labor market news is really good, both nationally and locally. And I brought in some local data from all of our regional counties, okay? Everyone talks about shortages. It's probably been a conversation piece for the last couple of years. What I want to say is that it's still a relevant conversation, but it's not quite as relevant as it was a year ago. Things are changing a bit, and I want to tell you why and where, okay? This is really important. We're in an expansion. You know, believe it or not, the economy has been growing, and I'll show you that, has been growing for quite a while. But there are significant groups of people who have been left behind. And that has a huge impact, a very important impact on the policies. Whether we're talking about downtown development, whether you're talking about job fairs, who is being left behind and why, and what kinds of barriers do they face? And I want to talk about that. And then finally, this is sort of the, I don't know what I'd call it. It's not bad news, but it's kind of a wake-up call in terms of what's going to happen in the next 10 years in terms of population and in terms of employment. Okay, next slide. All right, so there'll be a lot of numbers, and I'll try to make sense of them. This is called GDP, Gross Domestic Product, the value of all goods, final goods and services produced in a quarter. And it's goods and services. What they do is kind of like your bank loan rate, you analyze it, annualize it. So it may have grown a certain amount in the last quarter, but we say, what's the annual rate of growth? It's kind of like your 10% mortgage or hopefully your 2% mortgage, right? And so you can see that in the pandemic, we went down 2.2. It was a negative. We have come back and we are really at pre-pandemic growth rates. So on a big national scale, things are pretty good. Next slide. Inflation. So this is the official data. This is where I'm going to tell you things are good. And then I'll get back to why people are upset. We peaked at 8.9, which means that if you take a basket of goods and you price them, and then you take a basket of goods the next month and the next month, and you reprice them, what is the rate of change of prices of those goods and services? That's the essential idea. And what we have is a 12-month percent change. So in whatever month that is, June of 22, it was 8.9% on a 12-month basis. It has come down to 3.1% in the most recent data. That's good. All right, next slide. I like to look at it a slightly different way because what happened 12 months ago, it could have been like a really high month and therefore the rate looks low. It could have been a low month. I like to look at blocks of time and what's happened over those blocks. And it's kind of like your loan. If you have, say, a loan for 6 months, but they express it at an annual rate, that's kind of what I'm doing here. So what you see is something called all items. This is the measure of inflation for literally all items, goods and services, okay? And in January to June 22, it has had an annual rate of 11.1%. That's not good. That's pretty high. And from July to December of 2022 in orange, it was 3.1. In the most recent period, January 23 to January 24, 3.1. So you can see there was this really bad period and it has eased. Now, what's important is that food's come down. I know what you mean about the light. Yes. It's fun. Food's come down. Core has come down. Now, what do we mean by core? It's basically all items, and then you take out energy and food, because those are pretty volatile, okay? Commodities, goods like tables, chairs, etc., way down. As a matter of fact, it went negative. I mean, prices do fall, right? Believe it or not, prices do fall. So what's the stubborn part in our economy? Services. Those are still relatively high, okay? All right, next slide. All this slide is saying is that if you look at wage changes on a 12-month basis, and you mentioned, I think, benefits in one of the comments, benefit changes, or just the total, wages and benefits, compensation, it was pretty steady, and then after the pandemic, with all the things happening with inflation, it rose. And even now, it's easing a bit. I mean, it's great to have higher wages, right? But on the other hand, a pressure on wages also has an impact on businesses. And so what this is saying is that when the wages, if you have lots of shortages, you're offering higher wages. This is actually a little bit of good news in the sense that wages are still growing, but businesses are not in this hyper-competitive environment to offer more money, okay? Next slide. All right. This is a slide that's fun for me. I don't know if it'll be fun for you. But there's 70 categories of items in the Consumer Price Index. Think of like fruit and vegetables, okay? There's 70 of them. And all I did, are you familiar with the Fed and the Fed's target for inflation, right? They want to have inflation at 2.1%. And that's for a certain data series. For the CPI, that translates into 2.5% annual rate of inflation. That's their target. And what I wanted to look at is, all right, with those 70 items, what percent of those items are greater than 2.5%? In June of 22, it was 91%. It was not a good news economy. Guess where it is now? Whoops, you can't see it because of my shadow. I feel like Peter Pan. 34.3%, which is getting back to where normal has been. Again, good news. All right, let's see why people are mad. Next slide. I looked at something called an average price. So there's fuel oil. The data on CPI, they collect like 85,000 prices a month. It's a huge operation. And they have thousands of observations on everything. Fuel oil, 281. Then between February 20 and January 24, it maxed out at 597. So it's come down to 377. So inflation's come down. You're still paying more than February 20. That's what people are mad about. Take a look at milk. 320 to 422 to 396. Do you call that progress? Well, yes. We have to also look at what happened to our wages. But the fact is, this is why people are still upset, because they go to the grocery store and they buy gas. And they see this, right? I mean, you all know, you go out to eat for breakfast. How much does it cost, right? It costs a lot these days. All right, next slide. Finally, I want to give you some good news, some even better news on forward inflation. In blue is something called the shelter index. That's the inflation rate for shelter. It looks at data over the last 6 months. In red is the Zillow index. All right, is this the part where you guys are going to another meeting? Yeah. So I should not take this personally, right? Is this going to be in the video? I'm sorry. All right. So in Zillow prices are today's prices. And what Zillow is showing is that prices are starting to come down. So that means that the CPI, since it's a 6-month lag, is actually going to start to improve over the next 6 months. That's good news. Next slide. Virgie, are you keeping track of time?
Yes.
Okay. I don't want to go too fast or too slow, but.
You're doing well.
All right, employment. Next slide. Our economy lost over 22 million jobs in 2 months. It's the pandemic. I mean, it was a singular event in our economy. And all I'm doing here is saying, all right, let the December level in 2007, let the December level of employment equal 100. And now let's just track it relative to 100. And so, because I can't put 22 million on a chart, you know, it would go through the ceiling and all the way down, right? So I do it based on 100. It comes down 22 million, and look at where it is. It's above the pandemic high. February 20 was a peak, and then the bottom fell out. And now we're above it. We're above it by over 353,000 jobs. Next slide. All right, if you look at where we are with employment, one measure, and you might be familiar with that monthly payroll number that comes out on generally the first Friday of the month. It's the change in the size of payrolls in the United States. How many jobs changed? What was the employment change? And you can see it was 353,000 in January. That was the estimate. The way I would characterize, in general, you've had these big purple months, but generally speaking, the red, the blue, and the yellow has seen just a gradual kind of decline in the change. These are still positive numbers. Is that bad news? No, because prior to the pandemic, what was a good month? 180, 190, 200. That was a normal, like, strong month. We're still at 353,000. Economists don't know what to do with this, because economists don't like good news. They're pessimists by heart, right? So that 353 is still a really strong number. And if you see those, like the payroll number came down this month, it's not negative. It's a slightly lower positive. It's going to come down because it's going to go back to more of a long-term equilibrium. Okay. Next slide. All right, I'm going to show this for the area, for our area. So I want to introduce the concepts. EPOP ratio, employment population, exactly how it sounds. The number of people employed divided by the population, civilian population. And it was, in February 20, 61.1 for this country, and it hit 51.2 by April, and now it's back to 60.2. We're not quite recovered. Labor force participation rate. That's the number of people who are in the labor force. Either you're working or you're looking for work, you're unemployed, and you divide that by the population. And that hit 63.3, and it's at 62.5. Again, not quite recovered. Next slide. So, where are we locally? So what I have are the 4 counties that Michigan Works Southwest, which is part of what we govern here that Sean works for. But it also, I put in Jackson because it's relevant, I think, to this area as well. And you can see that employment levels have recovered their February 2020 level in Branch, Jackson, and St. Joe counties. But the other way to look at this is they're pretty darn close everywhere. We have the dip and then come back up. Okay, next slide. EPOP ratio. They all fell below 50%. Huge decline during the depths of the pandemic. But they've recovered in Branch, Jackson, and St. Joe counties. And again, they're pretty close. I would call 57.1 versus 57.8 pretty close. So I think in terms of this area, we're actually doing, in terms of the recovery back to February 20, and I use kind of February 20 as my marker of when things started going downhill and then coming back up. We're doing better than the overall economy, I think, in this area on these dimensions. Next slide. LFPR, labor force participation rate. They have recovered in Branch, again in Jackson, and in Kalamazoo counties. And again, I would describe it, relatively speaking, as very close for all of them. Again, I think a little bit stronger than the nation. Next slide. So we all talk about the unemployment rate, and I got to say, I mean, I used to run the program that put out the unemployment rate every month and the inflation rates. That was my prior job. I spent years running the measurement programs at the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And I love the unemployment rate. It's just boring because you don't really know what's going on with the economy. All you know is that it's good. It's come back down in Calhoun to 4%. And in Branch, you can see it went way up and then it's come back down. But it doesn't really tell you overall about the health of the labor market. You have to look at more than just the unemployment rate, okay? But terrific recovery in all these counties. Next slide. All right, so I mentioned shortages. Everyone's talking about shortages. And the message I want to give you is they're still here, but they're not as the shortages are not as big a problem as they were. But I want to give you better advice than that. I want to tell you what industries seem hot in terms of being really in shortage, which ones are strong in terms of being in shortage, but which ones are really cooling, which ones are weak. And so the first thing I'm going to show you is, what do I look at if I want to see a shortage? If I want to look at the data and say, gee, this is in shortage, what are the data I look at? Next slide. So the first thing I look at is this wonderful data series called Job Openings and Labor Turnover. And they've recently put out this data for Michigan and for all states, okay? In red, you have job openings. This is the number of job openings on your books, if you will, on the last day of the month. It is not, and I repeat, though I haven't said it yet, I will repeat, it is not job postings. It's the actual openings that if qualified candidates walk through the door, you could fill today, okay? We know how, postings work, right? You have 3 vacancies and you post for 100 jobs, or, there's a lot of turnover kind of thing. This is our actual job openings you could fill. Hires, so it's on the last day of the month. Hires are the number of hires over the month. And you notice at the end of 2020, 2021, 2022, openings went way up relative to hires. That's called a shortage. One dimension of it. It has eased a bit. You can see openings have come down. So that's one piece of evidence. Next one. By the way, these are all national numbers. I'm going to show, I'm not looking at industries yet. I'm going to show you in a minute. Quits. If the market's hot and you can get a better job elsewhere, we've all heard stories about people who accept a job and then they don't show up because they went and got another job a week later. There was a thing called the Great Resignation, the resignation economy, people job shopping all over the place. And that's true. 4.5 million was the peak, which is the highest in the 20 years that the series has been in existence. It's now come back down to 3.4, but it's still pretty high. Again, it's eased. Next slide. Besides the fact that this looks like a defibrillation, did I say that right, episode on your chart. Oh, I'm on video and I'm mispronouncing words. My wife will love it. There was this huge sort of change going on in wages during the pandemic. So what you really want to look at is before the pandemic, it's, we're in an expanding economy, it's slowly rising. But now look at where we are here. We're still way elevated. So wages are still a strong indicator. Think of it this way. These are average wages. When you want to find a new worker, you offer higher wages to new workers. But if the average for all workers is going up because you want to retain workers, that's even better and more convincing to me evidence that we're in a shortage. And so the elevated wages, I think, are a sign, but those have been easing a bit. Next slide. Then this is a repeat of the other slide. I just want you to know, the other thing I look at is employment growing? If it's a hot market, you don't expect employment to be declining, right? All right, so next slide. I'm not going to go through every industry with 4 slides per industry on the signs of shortages. I'm going to tell you what I found. Health is hot. It's hot on all the dimensions. Job openings are bigger than hires. Quits are still high. Wages are high. Employment is growing fast. In these strong markets, except for construction, job openings are much higher than hires. Now in construction, they're still higher, but not quite as much. But it's the other indicators, the wages, the quits, the employment, it's all strong, okay? Cooling markets. In cooling markets, openings and hires are the same. And those other dimensions I mentioned, there's just a mix. You're not looking at a uniform message that this is a hot market. Sometimes employment's a little bit weak, sometimes wages are coming down, that kind of thing. So I see a lot of cooling in the job shortage areas, and then the weak market is retail, trade, and non-durable manufacturing. Employment has been falling in those industries. As a matter of fact, in non-durable, 10 out of the last 11 months. A significant period of decline. So the cooling markets are leisure, transportation, and wholesale trade. And I think the economy is going to continue drifting from the hot will become strong, some of the strong will become a little bit more cooling. I think it's going to be hitting back towards a more normal equilibrium. Next slide. So, who's getting left behind in an expansion? You remember the term, it's the she recession? Well, I'm not a marketing expert, but when I look at the data, I would call it the she, less than bachelors, everybody who's less than bachelors, and basically people who are in marginalized groups, people of color, that are also being left behind. But with a real focus in all of those dimensions on having less than a bachelor's degree. Of the 22 million jobs lost in 2 months, approximately 63% of them were in lower wage industries, where the lower wage is dominated by people with less than a bachelor's degree in terms of their educational attainment. There was a focused, the job loss was really focused in particular areas. Next slide. So what I've done here is I have less than bachelors. This 4795, even though it's a positive number, represents job loss from February to April. Again, I'm doing February to April 2020. This is saying that we lost 4.8 million. These are in thousands. 4.8 million jobs. We regained 3 million. For which group? White, non-Hispanic males. Now, I'm using categories that come out of the surveys. These are not the words we use in our culture. These are words that are captured through the survey instrument, okay? Non-white males, where I'm combining non-Hispanic blacks and blacks according to the survey. And then white non-Hispanic females, and non-white females. And you notice that two of the groups, this doesn't say anything about the quality of the jobs that were regained. But what it does say is that there has been a real decline in employment coming back of white non-Hispanic males and females. The other thing that it's saying is the job losses in all these groups dominate everything. You don't see these, sorry, I should have had a slide on it, but you don't see these kind of job losses in those with the VA or above. The job loss was focused on all these groups with less than a BA. All right, next slide. All I did here is I said, all right, let's take a look at these two groups, the white non-Hispanic males and females. Let's look at their labor force. Their labor force in February 20 and then in January 24, and I did it by age group. And because I was kind of interested in that whole thing of the retirement economy, are all the older people disappearing? Well, it turns out their employment actually increased from February 20 to January 24. But overall, every age group was negative, and so the potential labor force lost was almost 3.5 million of those two groups in terms of withdrawals from the labor force. All right, next slide. This is looking at the kind of raw data. I was able to do some analysis. And these are people who are out of the labor force, but they want a job now. And they say they have reasons why they can't either look for work or take a job. It could be something as simple as, I just don't believe work's available in the area. Or I'm in school, I would decide to go back to school. So good, bad reasons, combinations. And if you look at all the reasons, the number of people citing this, that number has come down. But if you look at people who are out of the labor force, want a job now, and cite childcare, family responsibility, or transportation as a barrier, that number hit 1 million in the summer of 2020, and guess where it is now? 1 million, 1.1. These are groups that are facing significant barriers that we are trying to reach through Michigan Works, through the work that we do with the Downtown Development Authority. How do we get the folks who are having problems just even getting to work because they don't have transportation, getting to work because they don't have childcare? This group is still very, very large on a national basis. Next slide. Of that group, 55% of that group are females with less than a BA. That's where you get the she recession. That's where you get the she recession less than a BA. Okay. Next slide. All right. I'm sorry, I don't know how I'm doing on time, but I got to get through these slides. Am I doing all right?
Go ahead. Yeah, you're fine.
Okay, good. These slides are a little scary, but they also represent a real opportunity. I want to talk about long-term, kind of the forecast part of this. What is happening in the long term in terms of demographic trends? Where is our economy going? Next slide. Well, first of all, and this is from the Research Seminar in Quantitative Economics. Very hard to remember that name. It's at the University of Michigan. They do the budget forecast for the state. They do a national forecast, a state forecast, and they do some regional, not a lot. One of the things they do is they look at population. And in yellow, that's the natural growth of the population. And what they're saying, which a lot of people are saying, is that somewhere in the 2040s, our natural growth without immigration, our natural growth of the population is going to start declining. Now, for immigration, they just put the actual data and then they put a straight line, because basically what they're saying is we don't know what's going to happen to immigration. Okay? Now, I'm not going to walk into an immigration debate tonight, but what I am going to say is that I think we need to change conversation on immigration, and in particular on high-skilled immigration. I know we have a conversation that we're having, or we should have, on the border, where a lot of that immigration is for people who have a high school or less than high school degree. But we need to have a conversation about high-skilled immigration. I'll say more in a minute. Next slide. The reason I want to say that is over this slide and the next one, in the next couple. The Congressional Budget Office puts out projections of population and employment. And they also put out estimates based on actual data. So from 2012 to 22, that's 10 years, 120 months. Employment in the US grew from 142 to 158 million. So if you take that change and you divide by 120 months, you get an average monthly change of 131,000. If you take their projections over the next 10 years and divide by 120, guess what the average monthly change in employment is going to be? 53,000. So all that stuff is said about shortages disappearing or easing and all that, it's true for the next 2 years. Not over the next 10. We're going to be scrambling for workers. Now, I was on a panel a couple months ago where my fellow panelists said, well, you're just going to have to get used to lower rates of GDP. And I said, time out, take a look at the next slide. Good, I was hoping to be the next slide. Look at the population of developing countries. Growing like gangbusters, that's in blue. Green are the US, Europe, etc. Guess what's going to happen in the next 10 years? Our export markets are going to be booming. We're going to be competing with China, Russia, India, etc. for this growing market, population market. Plus, you know, even though we may not be growing in population as much as we were, we're going to want more iPhones and more, you know, all the stuff that we want. It's going to continue to be a vibrant US economy, but we're going to do it with far fewer people. So I was mentioning that thing about immigration. Next slide. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I want to do this one first. No, can you go to the, I'm going to do this in reverse order. Next slide. Good. These are H-1B visas. And the whole point here is that there's been a couple years where the cap has been increased. But look at the number. It's like 70,000 a year, H-1B visas. It's a trickle. You know how many days it takes to snap up those visas? And most of them are snapped up by like Amazon and other IT ventures. 2 days. They're gone. If you lose your job in the United States as an H-1B visa holder, how many months do you have to find a new job? Or you're out? Almost. 6. It's very close. 6 months. I've been bringing people in from Poland. Okay. Guess what Canada just did? They changed their rule. You have 4 years to find a new job. Where do you think the H-1B visa holders from Michigan are going? Across the bridge to Windsor. But it's more than just that rule. I think these numbers could be greatly expanded. And I don't know, I don't think the state has any particular power to get an exception to federal rules. Because I was kind of hoping that the Michigan Growing Together Population Council would have some sort of recommendation on greatly expanding H-1B visas for Michigan. But I think we need it. Previous slide. The other reason we need it, this is my last slide, and this will take just a little bit of work, but it's really important. That 19.4 in blue, what I did is I took all the occupations, and for every occupation I have a wage, and I just put them from lowest to highest. And I said, okay, let's take a look at the 25th, the first wage quartile, okay? in terms of out of total, you take the wages times the number of people, what is the wage value that's in the lowest 25%? And how many people work in those occupations? And it turns out in the year 2022, 19.4% of people worked in the lowest quarter by wages of occupations. And in the highest, it was 22.3%. I then took data on projections, the employment growth in occupations over the next 10 years. And I have their wage, I just used the wages in 2022. So I put them in the same buckets, the same wage buckets, okay? And I just looked at the growth. Right now, 20% of people are in the lowest wage quartile, but only 9.6% of the growth is going to be in those occupations. We're gonna have this huge oversupply in the second wage quartile. If skills are correlated with wages, you pay more for better skills. What this is saying is that the demand, that 59.6, is going to be growing like crazy for more skilled workers, whereas the current supply has to really catch up. And what we're gonna need is a lot more skill development. And that skill development will either come through workforce training programs that private industry provides, that we have from the Going Pro Talent Fund through Michigan, that we have from Michigan Works, that we have from just economic development agencies in Albion, in Southwest Michigan First, Connexus, Cornerstone. But we're going to need more skilled workers. And that's where I would contend that we're also going to need to have emigration of more skilled workers because we just can't keep up with the numbers. And that is my last slide. Thank you.
So I don't know if this mic's working. I would add, perfect segue in your packet. The last couple of pages are a preview of our current year for 2024, our what they used to call ILC, Industry-Led Collaborative. It's a segment of Going Pro, but now they're calling it Employer-Led Collaborative. I didn't get that clarified today. We did this here in Albion last year, and we brought 15 employers together that all had varying needs in their organization, but they all took the same training. So they all took Dale Carnegie leadership training. So we're doing that again this year. So we have Dale Carnegie leadership training. We also have MMTC offering manufacturing skills development, finance for the non-financial manager, and project management. So again, focus on maybe the softer skills, the leadership skills, the growth skills. And we are hearing organizations say we need that too. So so selfish plug, it's in the packet. That announcement should be coming out from the EDC office in the next couple of days because I think the applications are opening. We'll be asking employers to jump in and get involved again like they did last year.
Hopefully in April time, sometime in April, we'll have the PowerPoint session
Yes.
for the ELC.
Right.
And then applications will start right after that.
Okay,
and then
great.
cycle 2 will be right around May, June time, and applications will start.
Yep, so cycle 2 means Going Pro, so
Yep.
you as any company in here can do their own. Then the ELC means you can come together with a whole group of people that are not necessarily tied to an industry, but just tied to a community that is trying to better the community. So we're a little out in front on that, I will tell you. So, but that is something we are working on doing. The other plug I'll put in just before I bring Woda up, from the MEDC's perspective, very much what we just heard, the knowledge economy jobs are the jobs that we need to be training for. And if you talk to Quentin Messer, the CEO of the MEDC, he'll say whatever we're doing in the next 2 years are going to project the vision for the next 20 years. And he said that 2 years ago, and he continues to say that. So every day, we're planting the seed for what this is going to look like in 2040 and 2050. So I'd like to bring up Craig and Phyllis and Patrick to talk a little bit about housing.
Thanks, Virgie and Michael. Incredible presentation. Enjoyed it very much. Craig Patterson, I'm a Senior Vice President for Woda Cooper Companies. We build affordable housing in 17 states. We are based in Columbus, Ohio, and I'm fortunate enough to live in Mackinac City in the Michigan office. And tonight with me is Phyllis Loudermill with HERCO, and she is the champion of the CAP program, which is a MSHDA program. And Phyllis will come up a little later and she will talk about CAP. And then Patrick Olding is with me. And Patrick worked, really, he was the point man on Kennedy Greene, which is a development that is pending on North Eaton Avenue or Road, 48 units, affordable housing with rents that will be targeted at the AMI level of 30 to 80% AMI of the local Calhoun County rents. Next slide, please. So you can see the data. It's at 1337 North Eaton. It's a $15.5 million investment, 48 units, 1 through 3 bedrooms. Next slide, please. This will give you an idea. This is the site plan, 2 buildings. These are 2-story walk-ups, and you can see access off of Eaton. Next slide. These are the elevations. Next slide. Combination of vinyl and brick. The architect's rendition. Next slide, please. Right now, we're waiting for MSHDA to announce the funding. We applied on December 1st. It generally takes them up to 90 to 120 days to determine which of the competitors, which of the developers that submitted will be awarded. We think that they're going to announce by the 3rd week in March. And right now, our self-scoring ranks us up at the top of all the other developers in the rural pool, which Albion's in the rural pool. We hope to close on the land and have our financing by December, and this time next year, construction will be underway. With March of 26, we'll be putting tenants in the new buildings. Next slide. Phyllis.
Can I go over here? Is that okay?
Sure.
I've been standing all day. I've been buying basketball shoes. Muskegon Heights won their game, and so we got a call that there was a need, and we filled it. One thing about being older in the room, you tend to have conversations for a long time. So we become friends, and so I always try to ask for permission as to where I should go with certain conversations when we're in the room. Because I think that when we look at where we are and the trades and all the job opportunities that's available to us, there's tons of reasons why there are a gap in those areas. And so some of those is diversity inclusion, some of those are training, some of those are skill sets in schools, lots of things. But much is given and much is required. So that means that if we did a lot, maybe that was not enough. If we did nothing, that was really not enough. And so at the end of the day, just doing, it means that we do together. And if we do that, then things will work. So I was a CAP graduate. So if you look at me and she said, how many of us are girls? And everybody stood up and said, how many like girls? And I'm gonna say, how many like older girls? So now at 65, it is a great thing. And so Woda, I've known this company almost over 10 years. I didn't get there overnight. It took a lot of time, learning, trusting, and growing together. So if you look at all the assessment we did over the years about what was the gap and who we're going to put to work and who's not reading and who's not participating, and how are you going to buy a house if you can't afford to buy milk? How do you choose what trade you go into? How do you get rid of those barriers, like the guy that was incarcerated that can't find a house, or I can't get to work because I don't have my license, or it just goes on and on and on and on. I have a partner in the room, and I think he's native here, and that's Mr. Mark Smith. So we go from one age to the other, and we learn from one another. I'm the older, and they're the younger. What I found is that the CAP program was the program that I knew that we had to be a part of. We worked hard to pull the pieces together. I brought a group of communities together because you can't do this by yourself. We sat down, we talked about it, like how to write this grant. Because one thing about getting seasoned, you don't want to waste your time. And all money is not good money, and all opportunity is not the best. So I knew that this would be the time in history where we really could make a change. The governor, MSHDA, put together an opportunity, and we applied for it. So it's HERCO, my company, and Detroit Training Center out of Detroit. We became a partner, and then I realized we needed someone bigger than us. We needed a Woda, someone that can teach us about developing and give us that opportunity to be at the table where places we would not go. And then I realized after all the things we needed, if you do the math, from 25, I went a little further. I subtracted 25 from 18, I got 11. So then we started doing what? Creating parent universities. Then I realized I can't send the parent to work if you don't teach kids how to go to work. So we partner with high schools, elementary schools. So one of our partners, Muskegon Heights, the other one is Muskegon. And then I realized Job Corps. In our schools, everybody did not go and do what they should have done in school. And everything that we've labeled is not necessarily not a good student, right? So we put those young people and those kids that don't want to go to college, they can go to Job Corps. Those kids that want to go to college can learn about being a business owner. So this CAP program encompasses everything from getting your builder's license, for real estate, skilled trades, soft skills, fair housing. We tried to put everything we could imagine in this, it's a pocket of toolbox to recreate the world that we just got through talking about. One gentleman says, I want to do a business, but where do I find them? Someone says, well, we got to create something else. And then the other number is, why is it low here? Then you need a BA. We need all of those things. But in order for CAP to be successful, we're going to need all of you too as well. So you have what Michigan Works, we just partnered with you. The LED program for housing. We're going to do this all over the state, and I want you to extend that to all your other friends, all your other communities, all your other churches, because it has to go from the grassroots to the top. You can't miss anybody, because we cannot keep assuming that people need blue socks and they may need red. We have to really bring them into the room to have a real conversation about what is keeping you from being part of what we're doing every day. And then when they walk into the room, we have to have an open heart and an open spirit and mind to listen and try to understand. And then once we bring that together, I think CAP is going to be an awesome opportunity. I am very grateful to be in Albion, but more than anything, I am grateful for my partners to give me the opportunity to do the things I'm doing. And I'm even more grateful to Michigan, our governor, Whitmer. This is a brain conception of saying, hey, I realize there's a gap. How do we fix it? They need housing, they need jobs, and the need is so great that it took her and the MSHDA team to sit down like we just did today, went on the whiteboard and say, hey, what are we going to do? We're going to do a CAP program. And that's what it is. And I'm hoping that those of you that are in this room will partner with us. It's not if they will announce, I'm going to put it in the universe, they are going to announce. And if and when we do, because we are coming to work here, we want to work with this community. We want young people to come to work on those jobs. So when we start training, we want them to come train. You have to have training to do what you need to do. So I think this training for CAP went across the board for everything, for skilled trades. And just say that you want to be a business owner, you can actually get your builder's license. So I'm gonna say this. Let's put on our socks. Don't put your shoes on too tight, because I'm gonna kick them off. And I tell you something about what we're doing tonight. Some of those young people and adults would have been here, but there's a couple schools, Muskegon and other schools around us, even in Grand Rapids, they're now working for their titles. So I'm here with the guys over there. But I have a great team, and we have people that are already ready to work. And we work with the unions as well. So my union is 1191 Laborers, and they're the carpenters, and they're there at Job Corps. And so we want to fill that gap with all those trades. And the reason why, because people want to go home. They want to retire. But don't we want the best when we go home? Because we're going to have to retire too as well. So I hope that you would stop over to see me. I hope that you would give me a chance to come and sit with you again, to have a more in-depth conversation. And look forward to us coming to this community. And then I'm going to take you on the other side, of the east side and the west side, because every one of us need one another. So thank you again for giving us this opportunity. And again, my name is Phyllis Loudermill. And if you would like to find me, it's hercompany2@yahoo.com. Phone number is 616-828-6750. Warning, if you do not find me, I will find you. I'll be knocking on that door and ask you, how can we work together to change our communities? Any questions?
Next slide. Phyllis, you might want to say something on the next slide.
It was cold that day. Very cold. We were in Traverse City. So, interesting when you go up north in different areas, right? And so I'm a journaler. And I write at night to collect not only my thoughts, but to remind me if I made an A, B, or C in my life, in my walk that day. And that's how I keep myself on point. I always want to be an A, but just I might got a D because I said something I shouldn't say, or I did something, whatever. But this day was the most interesting day. So if you picture this project that we're on, we're looking at Section 3. I don't know if anybody knows what that is. We're looking at how to create employment around certain populations, right? So we're walking, and this is Scott, and he's educating me about things I don't know, and I learned a lot. I learned about, the electrical pod, why I was going to move over there, going into the room and watching the drywall. I'm learning so much that my eyes are opening, because I've been there a long time. I thought I knew everything. I don't know nothing. But this whole idea of just being in this community was amazing. And then we went to the city, and there was a conversation had about, did we need housing? Was there any problems in our city? Well, if you look at Traverse City, you never thought there would be anything like that there, because it's a very prevalent city. People there, they retire there. Yes, they have some of the same social ills as everybody do. So we say no what left behind? There was no city left behind. So when you talk about the CAP program and the WODAs and things we're doing, it's going to allow us to probably be so impregnated in other communities, like a Traverse City, that you probably would not think you see housing such as that, but it's going to be everywhere. And the job development, the need was there as well. So I got to be very fortunate to be the girl to go over with them. I got my official jacket that day too, by the way. It looks kind of cool in yellow, huh? Next time I'm gonna do it and put pink on it. But I got my official jacket, but it goes back to all the things that Woda made CAP work. CAP can work based on the training and the need. But at the end of the day, if we don't do diversity inclusion, which we are, which is a part of this as well, we partner with Muskegon Community College, so KCC, we come to see you, and the other schools as well. But if we don't add that as a piece of the pie, so when we have those real conversations about why we can't get hired, you gotta have it. And then we gotta get outside of ourselves, because all of us have isms about what we believe. So this project, I think we're waiting for that announcement as well.
Yep.
And I'm gonna put it in the universe, and we're gonna get that announcement as well. And then we're gonna get it because the things we are gonna do to make this work, so that when Michigan Works has another job fair, and Upjohn is talking about, you know, your theories of what you're doing, and then the person in back is talking about putting a company together, and then Mark is in his community because he lives here, and he want to build housing. All of this stands on the heads of these type of opportunities. So we're going to build more and more and more, and then hopefully, you might want to do one, but if you do, give Woda a call, or give HERCO a call. We'll come join in with you, because the more we build this together, the better off we're going to be. And Michigan Works, you are our best friend. And we have done a lot of different changes over the years. You know, Michigan Talent. You know, I was back when President Obama gave the largest gift to Detroit. We trained a lot of people. But the question is, where are they at now? We don't want another repeat. And I think that the CAP program and all of the partners at the table who've gone through these episodes at one point or another for training, I think we finally get it. I think we finally get that we need each other, and we're going to bring all the resources and skills that we have to the table, open our toolbox, and we're going to share.
Any questions? Last slide as we leave. We're not going to talk about it, but it's kind of a summary. Okay. Thank you all.
At a very, very high level, if you think about the federal infrastructure policy that is now, you know, kind of where the funds are generating from, the focus is on semiconductors, clean energy, mobility, and defense. They also have a focus on the Justice 40 requirements, which helps us with appropriate division of dollars. And they also focus on community benefits. Those community benefits being childcare, healthcare, workforce development, and transportation. So as we are studying at the EDC, our priorities, which are in your packets, we're looking at what we're seeing at the national level, what we're seeing at the state level. The state right now is the 49th oldest state in the union, meaning as far as age of average age of population, how do we get young people here? We get young people here by having something to come to, and they believe the jobs will follow them. So it may seem as if I don't talk enough about job development, but I'm really anxious to support placemaking. I'm really anxious to support training. I'm really anxious to support something that's going to attract people to come here and then stay here, and we will build the jobs around that. Our biggest goal for this year and the next few years will be building our new industrial park. And you'll hear more and more about that in the next, I would say, 6 to 8 months. But just please know that we are working on job creation. We are really working on training. We really are working on housing, which I know has never been a focus of the EDC here, but it's also never been a focus of the Michigan Economic Development Corporation either, and it is now. So that's why you see that happening. So I just want you to know that we're paying attention and we are working hard for you, and I so appreciate being able to do that. So thank you all.